EAR stands for Educate, Activate, Recruit, Repeat. Today, we're going to start with the first E, not because we're trying to feel smarter, but because we're trying to act more clearly. Fair enough? Like, that's what I'm about. I do want to do another reminder before we go too deep and remind you about the due before Monday. These actions are for the rest of the June. All I'm asking y'all to do is pick one. You do not have to do all 5. Oh, remember, the due number 1 is to go ahead and try to make your power addresses. Write down your local elections offices, your local governing bodies, your state legislators, your state senators, Congress and U.S. senators, and go ahead and put it on your fridge, put it on your phone, put it in the family group chat, put it somewhere where you have access to it. Number 2, I want you to ask one politician one measurable questions, and not, do you support democracy? No. That's cute. It is not enough. Ask, what specific action will you support before the 2026 midterm, and tell them that you want them to respond in writing, right? It is start that we get good practice in getting out there and speaking directly to and getting information back in writing. Number 3, read one source, not a screenshot. So I hope you're finding your good sources out there. I have ground news too. And then once you get that source, I want you to explain it to somebody, right, in plain language, not the way cable news does it or academically, just regular language. If you can't explain something, a source you have or information or event to somebody that is making grits, that's my standard. 4, recruit somebody for book club. I don't care if it's a cousin, it's a neighbor, it's a church member, coworker, teenager, seasoned saying, not 50 people, just one. And then the last do that I'm asking you to do is to find send some gratitude and ask for needs. The local elections are it's gonna be a thing, y'all. I'm just preparing you all for what is to come. Go ahead and send your local office a short note, gratitude for your work. What should the residents know before they go for the next election? What do you need from the community or the public or elected officials? And be a poll worker. Come, do insert yourself in the process. Do not underestimate this, because remember, trust is infrastructure too. So we are going to learn how to help make these folks move. We are going to build coalitions, and we're going to get ourselves prepared, because we're in for it this year. I'm not mincing words. The way that things are going at the federal government level, it's going to get uglier before it gets prettier. But I need you to we want to move with clarity. So we want to call, we want to post, we want to fuss. We may want to say something, somebody got to do something. And I also agree. But before we go to somebody, we need to know who. Before we go to something, we need to know what thing. And before we ask, power to move, we need to know where the power sits. Is that fair? And that is education. Education is not just knowing your issue, but knowing the process. The specific is not being difficult. Specificity is being useful. That is extremely useful. It gives me direction. It gives that person direction, and it doesn't allow for a vague ask gives a politician somewhere to hide. You understand? Being really vague, it can. You said you care about education. Well, I care about education too, right? We're doing stuff on education, but when I say, what are you doing in the state budget to fund support staff, I have to give you a specific answer. And I'm telling y'all, we have to get back to, I want it in writing. So that is sort of your quote for the day. A vague ask gives power a place to hide. A specific ask gives people a place to stand. Is that fair? I'm going to say that again. A vague ask gives power a place to hide. A specific ask gives people a place to stand. We want people standing up. Movements that do not usually win because of one big dramatic moment. They typically win because people learn the system, they pressure the system, and then they keep showing up after that first no. What the book reminds us is that successful movements are built through sustained pressure, not one specific civic sort of fireworks, right? The civil rights movement, the labor movement, the environmental movements, marriage equality, none of those movements were like one single meeting, one single march, one vote, or one post. They were years of people learning the process and refusing to disappear. Right. And that's why I keep saying voting is no longer the minimum for civic engagement. I really need you to hear that very loudly. Voting, it's not the minimum for civic engagement. Voting does matter. Please vote. I'm not telling you that voting doesn't matter, but if voting is the only thing you do, you are absolutely leaving power on the table. So we can't do democracy like a very bad group project where one person does all the work and everybody else signs their name at the end. You know, the organizing versus mobilizing. And organizers are telling you, Kim is one, Chelsea Hicks Wise is one. It's like organize before you mobilize, man. You got to get it together. So this is the civic calendar that I want you to remember for the lane that I drive in as a state representative. August through December is when you educate, organize, and ask legislators to patron, carry, or support legislation. So January through March, however long your particular state session is, because I know not everybody here is Virginia, this is when bills are moving through the subcommittee committee process, doing the floor votes, amendments, budget negotiations and conferences. In that time, you got to get in early because subcommittee is where things are made or broken, right? If you're waiting until it gets to committee, you've waited too late. So if you wait until January for a fully asked form bill or need, you may already be too late. So don't wait until session starts to ask what you want. I need you to say it with me. If you wait until January, if you want it in January, ask in September, right? If you want it in January, ask in August. I am finalized. I like to be able to tell my constituents by Halloween, that's always the date. By Halloween, they should know what I have on the top of my mind that I'm going to carry. I should finalize that and have my legislative agenda ready for session by November 30th. I want you to understand that when you're out there doing, that outreach, it's not just a one-time thing. It's got to be repeatedly. It can be with respect, clearly, and with receipts. So understanding that when we talk about advocacy as we roll into this next session, that it's not this one-step thing. It's not a drive-through that you got to, you don't just pull up to the window and it's like, hey, let me get a democracy with a little extra accountability. That's not, and then you leave. You have to engage. You have to follow up. You have to send that source, ask that question, bring that neighbor, right? Because that is also pulling folks in the fold. So when we engage, y'all, we have to engage with intent. And this is where the book comes in, right? This is where it truly comes in. The educate, activate, recruit, repeat. Educate, it doesn't mean that you have to become a lawyer because that is not, or an analyst or know every code section in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Educate just means that you need to know enough to stop being easily dismissed. Understood? Educate means you just need to know enough to not be easily dismissed. So know your issue, know the level of government you should be talking to, the actual decision maker, the timeline, and the ask. Because sometimes, sometimes as we just talked about, sometimes issues are city issues, sometimes they're state issues, sometimes they're federal, sometimes they're school board, or they're a particular agency, or it's a budget, or it's a code, or it's a policy. And some things are just like implementations. When you sort of know the difference, you become much harder to ignore, right? So here's another holding hands. You do not need to know everything. You need to know enough to stop being dismissed, right? So pick your issue. Specific does not mean small. It just means it's got to be actionable. And I need us to sort of stop confusing passion with energy, right? With strategy, like passion and strategy are, passion is the fuel, strategy is the map, and then the process is the road. Okay. Your passion is the fuel, gas that car up. You got it. Strategy is the map. We know where we're going. And the process is the road. You actually need all three. Right? You need all three to make this happen. And that's real. So listen, leadership isn't just getting a vibe from somebody, right? And I know there's good energy and things like that. leadership it's not just a yard sign or or just being quotable. It is a responsibility, and we should treat it as such. And I will always say this, that hope matters. Hope is not a plan. Hope keeps us human. It keeps us from folding into ourselves. But again, it is not a plan. Hope is a match. The plan can be the firewood, and the work is what keeps it burning. That is why we build a community of doers, because the most important thing that we can do with our passion is learn the process to put it somewhere, right? Passion is the fuel, right? It is the fuel. And just remember that you still need it, but we've got to get that strategy so you have a map, and then that process you'll be going down the road sooner than later, right? When you get that, keep that match. Hope is that match, right? We're gonna get that plan. We got to gather that firewood, and then we're gonna keep it burning with the